Far down in the artillery tree, you can find the explosive barrel skill. Explosive barrels can be made at a smithy for 100 blasting powder, 6 flint, 20 metal, and 80 wood, with each blasting powder costing 1 crystal, flint, gem, organic paste, and salt. They can be shot as ammo out of regular cannons, not catapults as many people expect. They explode when they hit their target unless they land in the water. If they land in water, they arm after 5 seconds, then begin a timer that explodes after a short time. This can be a matter of seconds or minutes. When an explosive barrel is fired into the water this way, it can be triggered by shooting it again, or by having anything make contact with it, such as a friendly player or an enemy ship. Explosive barrels can also be placed. Obviously, they can be placed on any land or ship that you own. This includes placement on your own dinghies, which usually don't allow for items to be placed upon them, although sometimes placing one on a dinghy can be a bit buggy. Once placed, they take about 5 seconds to arm, and then they can be detonated. If you interact with an armed explosive barrel, you'll be given the option to detonate it immediately, or to set a timer for detonation anywhere from 5 to 240 seconds in the future. Generally speaking, explosive barrels cannot be placed in neutral or hostile territory, including water. One major exception to this rule are enemy ships. No matter whose territory you're in or whose ship you're on, you can place an explosive barrel on the deck. This means that if you can get aboard an enemy ship, even if you're in their own territory, you can place and detonate an explosive barrel. Explosive barrels deal 5,000 damage to anything made of wood, or 1,000 damage to anything made of stone. This means that with proper placement, a single explosive barrel will immediately destroy a dinghy, destroy multiple planks on a sloop, cause leaks in one or more planks or gun ports on a schooner or a brigantine, and if the sloop, schooner, or brigantine are left unattended, you can sink them with a single explosive barrel. And if you happen to have 2 explosive barrels, well, now you can set your eyes on bigger targets like the galleon or the noble raft. That's your bottom line up front. I've been hesitant to put this video out because we've been at war on the EU PvP server and I know this could be used against us. However, I've had a lot of questions about the explosive barrel that I wanted to answer, and if you're interested in seeing more detail about the explosive barrel, just stick around for the rest of the video. Thanks for sticking around. I'm standing here on one of the new ramshackled sloops, with the sole modification being that I've added a regular ship cannon. I'm going to start by firing an explosive barrel directly at one of the gun ports. Of the different types of ammunition you can fire from a ship, the explosive barrel is unique in that you cannot store it in an ammunition crate. You load it directly from the inventory of the person firing the cannon, and when fired it has a very short range. As you can see, the ship has taken 5,000 damage, specifically that gun port, because it's primarily made out of wood. The explosive barrel does do AoE damage that can be a bit unpredictable, but let's give it another shot just to see. By aiming at a junction where there are multiple panels close together, we were able to deal 35,000 damage with a single shot. Now let's take a look at how these operate in the water. Again, for the first 5 seconds, they're not going to do anything while they're arming. After that, it's anyone's guess on how long it will be until they explode. I've seen them explode immediately, and I've seen some take a full 5 minutes. Now let's look at placing an explosive barrel as an object and finding alternate methods of delivery. Obviously you can place it directly on a vessel of your own, however you probably don't want to place it on anything more expensive than a dinghy or a raft. They each have their own pros and cons, with the main pros of the raft being both its speed and the fact that it starts with 10,000 hit points, so it can actually survive the initial detonation, giving you the chance to deliver a second explosive barrel. One nice thing about delivering the explosive barrel to the exterior of the ship is that you can be sure that it's going to affect one of the planks or gun ports. The detonation timer allows you to set a delayed explosion anywhere from 5 seconds to 4 minutes in the future, Or if you're looking for more immediate results, you can use the detonate option, which also provides you with teleportation to a spawn point, items not included. Here we are back on the same raft, verifying that it did indeed survive and that the explosive barrel did the 5,000 damage we expect. Of course, we also want to verify that we dealt damage to our target, and upon inspection we see that what should have started at around 12,000 is now just under 7,000. You may recall me saying earlier that you only need 2 explosive barrels to sink an unattended galleon. That's because when a plank or a gun port has taken 10,000 damage, it starts leaking even though it's not destroyed, and an unattended leak will sink an entire ship. Now let's try placing explosive barrels directly on enemy ships, starting with the dinghy and working our way up. Normally you can't place anything on a dinghy, but the devs were nice enough to let us place these on dinghies. It may not be the best investment for sinking an enemy dinghy, however putting one on your own dinghy can sometimes enable you to maneuver into places you normally wouldn't be able to deliver one of these explosive barrels. You can see while I hold H that we are indeed within the red circle of enemy territory, and we are unable to place these anywhere except on ships. That being said, the only thing to do is to go to the next biggest ship, the raft. We've already seen my own raft survive an explosion, so this time we're going to use an explosive barrel on a damaged raft so that it will sink. Now that's out of the way, we'll have a clear view of this sloop whenever we set off our next set of fireworks. You can't place an explosive barrel on the outer hull, so you have to find a way onto the deck. A grappling hook is the perfect tool for this job. Let's place this barrel right up front where we know multiple planks are coming together, so hopefully we can damage more than one with a single explosion. That was definitely more than one location being damaged. Let's go take a closer look. As you can see, the port side of the ship was relatively unscathed, whereas the starboard side took the brunt of the damage. Explosive barrels do tremendous AoE damage, however it can be difficult to know exactly which panels it's going to damage. Let's move on to an enemy schooner. Let's try the same tactic as before, placing one all the way in the front where we know multiple planks come together. Planks on a schooner typically have more than 5,000 hit points, so a single explosive barrel isn't going to destroy the planks. A single barrel is sufficient, however, to cause many leaks, which will eventually lead to a ship sinking if it isn't repaired. From up here, it primarily looks like it was just ceiling tiles in the upper deck that was damaged. In a moment, however, we'll learn that one of the lower planks was damaged, and that single barrel was sufficient enough to sink the schooner. As I didn't know that at the time, however, I decided to go ahead and place a second barrel to see if we could have more luck. I'm pretty sure that just dealt 45,000 damage, so let's swing in and see what that looks like. From the exterior, things seem to be okay, but I still want to swing in and get a closer look. There's water down here, a great sign when it's not your ship. And sure enough, when we check the front, we find that we have multiple leaks. It's only a matter of time until this schooner is on the seafloor. Again, if you have the option to deliver these explosive barrels to the exterior of the ship, either using a raft or a dinghy or a cannon, take that option so you can be sure you're damaging the components that are going to cause the ship to sink. Of course, you may not always have that option because you might be swimming under someone's stone gate to get in their marina and wreak some havoc from the inside. Now that we're on an enemy Brigantine, we can try a few different locations as we're not likely to sink this one anytime soon, even though a single barrel is sufficient if delivered properly. Only 5,000. Not what we wanted to see, as there's a good chance it didn't land on one of the gun ports, but let's go take a closer look to see if it needs more effort. Unfortunately, the damage was dealt directly to the deck, which is strong enough to withstand several more explosive barrels. We'll just have to try a new location and see if we can't get a better result. We can try this front location as we have with the last two ships. But despite getting several 5,000 damage indicators, none of them seem to have damaged the hull. You can try to jump down onto the ribbing, but unfortunately, just like you can't place beds down here, you also can't place explosive barrels down here. We tried where more than one panel comes together at the front. Why don't we give it a shot here at the back? It seems like there's a lot more plank exposed, so maybe that will increase the chance that the AoE will damage a plank. That's what we like to see, water draining in. From now on, whenever I'm trying to sink a Brigantine with that barrel, I'm going to start in the back. Let's give this Brigantine one more to grow on just to speed up the process so we can see how devastating two exploding barrels in the same area will be. It looks like our job here is done. Let's move on to a galleon. Sticking with what we learned from the Brigantine, let's start by putting the explosive barrel in the center back to hopefully maximize our chance that we're damaging planks or gun ports. It does look like the damage was applied appropriately. Let's put another one down so we can get the water running in this thing. At 12,000 hit points per panel, we're not going to destroy any part of the hull with just two of these. However, I hear that beautiful sound of running water, so it's only a matter of time before this galleon is also on the ocean floor with all of this video's predecessors. Speaking of its predecessors, checking back up on the Brigantine, we see that things are starting to get a little bit damp on the upper deck. I think we've done our job. So we've taken a good look at how explosive barrels damage ships. Now let's take a look at how they damage other things, such as the ever-present large stone gate. Here we see the large stone gate has 16,000 hit points, and as I said earlier, against stone objects you're only going to do 1,000 damage for every explosive barrel. So if the 1,000 damage amount holds true, it would take us 16 shots to destroy one of these gates. And while that might seem like a waste of time for something you can normally swim underneath, if we've happened to have captured a ship inside that we want to get out and we don't have access to open the gates, we may need to take one of these down. Sure enough, 1,000 damage. And in case you're wondering if maybe you should shoot the gate's frame instead of the gate itself, unfortunately that doesn't seem to make a difference. Now let's look at more normal sized structures. Because of the short range that a cannon can shoot an explosive barrel, you may find that the number of opportunities you have to use it in this manner aren't that great. However, we want to test it out anyway, just so you can decide if it's worth giving a shot. I have both a wooden and a stone doorway set up side by side just within range, and just behind that in the distance, you can see one of my bases. The explosive barrel can only barely reach far enough to deal 1,000 damage to the stone side and 5,000 damage to the wooden side. Now let's see if the explosive barrel can reach my base right over there, and then compare that to a regular cannonball. Clearly out of range for the explosive barrel, but the regular cannonball can easily shoot over and beyond my base. The trade-off, of course, being that a regular cannonball only does 1/4 of the damage to stone structures. Since I made my video on the different types of artillery in Atlas, I've gotten the most questions about the exploding barrels, and I hope this is able to answer all of your questions. I tried all the different useful test cases that I could think of, and personally I intend to be planting all of my explosive barrels at the rear center of my targets whenever possible. If you like this content or you found it useful, I really appreciate the comments you guys leave for me, and of course subscribe if you'd like to see my future videos. You of course are always welcome to dislike my videos, and this one in particular, if you dislike it, I will forward to all of your enemies, as well as a care package of 10,000 blasting powder. Thanks for watching BLUF Gaming, and I'll see you on the high seas.